This is Dick from Carpet Masters. Carpet Masters has been serving the Inland Empire for over 60 years. We are locally owned and operated by the Stevens family. We not only clean carpet and furniture, we clean many loose rugs, including Oriental rugs. Oriental rugs are cleaned in our modern facility where the fringes are cleaned by hand, then hung in our modern facility to dry. We do not use steam cleaning to clean your fine furniture. Furniture is cleaned by hand using the same absorption cleaning used in the White House. Some furniture we bring into our plant to clean properly. We normally use 2 men on each cleaning job using the extraction method. There is nothing that would clean carpet better for our customers. Our job is to clean properly with quality first. Google Carpet Masters San Bernardino and give us a call, or go to carpetmasterssocal.com.
Wishing for a little more information?
Alrighty then.
You'll get it here at KCAA 102.3 FM Riverside.
Go! Ain't no stopping us now, folks. This is Empire Talks Back. I'm Wallace Allen here on the case for truth and justice with the right information to help improve the situation. Folks, today we are blessed to have in our midst, no on the phones, a true American hero. A man who has proven himself to be an American. He fought in Vietnam. He came back, went to college, got his degree at Michigan University in business. He is a member of probably the greatest group of people on the planet in that, you know, he's a farmer. He grows things, and I don't know how important that is to you, but I'd like to give you some statistics on farming, food and agriculture. Food and agriculture creates about 23 million jobs directly and 41 million indirectly. $760 billion in wages directly and about $6 trillion indirectly. The food and agriculture industry represents about 20% of the total United States economy and about 15% of all of its jobs. You just had a big story this week about Apple Industries reaching the $1 trillion valuation mark. Folks, food and agriculture, because you and I eat so much, because we consume it, this is the largest industry on the planet. If you're not eating, you're not growing. If you're not growing food and providing food for your community and your nation is failing. Recently, our government called for a tariff on, among other things, soybeans. Soybeans, with that tariff, people who are purchasing soybeans were able to look in advance and say, and the date may be arbitrary as I use it, well, in September the prices are going to go up, so between now and September we're going to buy and stockpile as much of this stuff as we can. Well, that's great news for everybody growing soybeans, except that we have another example of a disparity in America, a disparity that affects the people who have built America, built the industry of agriculture, African Americans, black farmers. And we find that in the effort to continue to participate and grow in the greatest industry on the planet, black farmers went out under the auspices of Bishop Hall, an American icon from Memphis, an American religious icon. They went to the scene, that's the name of a seed company, to purchase soybean seeds. Well, it turned out their soybean seeds didn't grow. They're fake seeds. You've heard about fake news. Well, this is fake seeds. And once again, we have bad news in the middle of the great news that the agricultural business is. The bad news is that they're trying to cheat us again. The good news is that we have a hero like Mr. Thomas Burrell who has stepped up again to create another lawsuit against those oppressors, those people who are denying African Americans, black farmers, the access to the great industry that feeds the world. We have on the phone with us today Mr. Thomas Burrell. He is the president of a group called the Black Farmers and Agriculturalists Association. I could tell you tremendous things about him, but just hearing his voice and the sincerity of his voice and the knowledge that he represents will do way more in a moment than I could do in an hour. Mr. Burrell, how are you this morning, sir? Bring Mr. Burrell on, please.
Wallace, did you forget about us?
I'm sorry, did I forget about you? No, I didn't forget about you. This is Tammy Martin. Tammy Martin, you know, she's a demanding lady.
Here to rile things up.
She's a demanding lady.
Of course I am.
She's also a person very involved in food and very involved in the right kind of food, and she's anxious to speak to Mr. Burrell. So she's here, and also we have Miss Leslie. What's your last name?
Lindsay.
Lindsay.
He'll do that, girl. He will jack up your name. It's Lindsay, and she's with Earth Wellness.
Very good. Well, the earth is sick right now. We need to bring it. We need to bring it back. Bring Mr. Burrell in, please. Mr. Burrell, how are you this morning, sir?
I'm quite fine, Brother Wallace. How are you?
God is great. I'm extremely grateful. I'm grateful for those things that I know, and even more grateful for the things you're going to tell me that I don't know. As we wake up the rest of America on the plight of America as a result of black farmers not being given access. You've been involved in several suits. If you'd like to bring us up to date on the initial black farmers suit that really was not just for black farmers but for their heirs as well, and bring us up to date as to where we are with this suit, the soybean seed suit against the seed company.
Yes, Brother Wallace, thank you again, and to your co-host Tammy and Lindsay, how are you all as well?
Oh, you really got me in trouble.
Wow, you're doing
You really
well.
got
Good
me
morning.
in trouble. Yeah, with just one introduction, you got everybody's name right, and now they're going to beat me up. But that's okay. I will succumb to the pressure here. But no.
But here again, we thank you for providing this opportunity for the Black Farmers and Agriculturalists Association and their members, heirs, landowners throughout the country. We are an advocacy association. We advocate, we argue, we plead, we stand in the gap, to paraphrase the gospel, for those who may not otherwise have the resources and or the means and the wherewithal to defend themselves against systemic discrimination. In 1999, this association and others were responsible for filing what the judge at that time, a federal judge, stated was the largest civil rights lawsuit in the history of this country. Wallace, Tammy, and Lindsay, this lawsuit was against the Department of Agriculture and particularly its lending arm or one of its lending agencies called the Farm Service Administration. Most people don't know it, but that USDA has a banking arm. It is one of the largest banking institutions. And Congress mandated that USDA was responsible for making loans, among other things, to farmers, ranchers, and individuals in agriculture and in the rural community, particularly where HUD does not have a mandate to make loans in housing. The Department of Agriculture was also responsible for housing loans in basically the rural. The lawsuit in 1997 alleged, among other things, that USDA had engaged in systemic discrimination in that, Brother Wallace, it denied black farmers and ranchers and others in the industry loans and loan benefits to engage in the occupation of farming. So that's basically the first lawsuit that we were involved in.
And I understand that they basically acquiesced to the charges that indeed they admitted that they were discriminating.
Well, yes, really there was no denying it. They just finally admitted to what everybody else, to include employees there at USD, was alleging, and that, yes, you are discriminating against black farmers. Keep in mind, Tammy, Lindsay, and Wallace, that in 1910, 45 years after slavery, African Americans had acquired over 16 million acres of land. This is when we could not read, we could not write. Ebonically speaking, didn't know where a college or a university was at. But our ancestors were very in tune to ownership of property.
16 million
16 million acres of land. Today, for all intents and purposes, we are down to 2 billion acres. So we've lost 14 million acres of land in the last 100 years. More disturbing, however, is that according to the same bureaus of statistical information, in 1920, there were 925,000 black farmers. For all intents and purposes, a million. Today, this association maintains that there are less than 5,000 actual farmers. The Department of Agriculture will say that there are 30,000. But whether it's 5 or 30, that means that over 900,000 of these individuals have also been put out of business as a result of
now, why do you think that is, though?
The discriminatory behavior of USDA and others as well.
Now, Ms. Lindsay was asking the question about, well, how did that occur? How did we go from 1 million to 5,000 farmers?
And what kind of produce or like what food are you guys producing? Is there a reason that the products that you're using is in the decrease of why this is happening? You know, because is it the kind of produce you guys are producing, or is it the agriculture? What is it? Is the products that you're using not, GMO based, or
is it the fair consequences of doing business regularly, or is there some other level of oppression taking place that's deep?
It's the latter, of course, and that's what the lawsuit proved, is that these individuals have lost both their land and their numbers for no other reason, among other things, because they have been denied credit. Credit is an essential commodity in any business.
Well, what does credit have to do with anything in the produce of health and producing this agricultural food?
Miss Lindsay, he's going to tell you now.
Okay, great.
This is why he's...
But what was the question again?
Yeah, go ahead and ask that question.
So the question I have to you is, why do you think this is occurring where you're losing, this and you're being denied, or you were stating that you have decreased in your agricultural jobs and things like that, and it's because of credit. Now, what if it's because of the actual produce that you guys are producing?
No, it had nothing to do with produce. Black farmers grow.
Then why is it decreasing in being denied?
Keep in mind that they farmed from Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, through what is referred to as the Black Belt, all the way from Virginia to East Texas and Oklahoma. So the commodities that they have grown are varied. They grew produce. They grew tobacco, corn, soybeans, all kinds of vegetables. Of course, King Cotton was in the day. So it had nothing to do with the demise or the shrinking of the market.
Well, no, I have something to say.
But let me say this. We can all say what we want to say after the expert is gone. We can all ask the question.
No, he has to be here, because here's the deal. And I'm sorry, I do have to interject as well, because we talk about purchasing seeds. Now, I know that industry very well. Okay, wait a minute. I know this industry very well. Now, are we purchasing the seeds? Because here's the deal. If we're purchasing seeds and we need a loan to purchase seeds, that means that we're dealing.
Every farmer that operates on credit. The rich white farmer and the poor black farmer. Well, no, this is the point. This is why there's a Black Farmers Agricultural Association.
I'm not speaking against it.
It's not a point of speaking against it. The point is that as we spend our time denying the discrimination or trying to justify the discrimination,
I'm not justifying
or to explain that it's coming from the way we're growing the food or any of those.
No, that's not what I'm about to address. What I'm about to address is this. If we are getting loans from seeds, and I'm just putting it out there, that means that we are dependent on our seeds from companies. And if we're dependent on our seeds from companies, especially some of the big dogs right now, and we're not producing our own seeds, that's because we're dealing with GMOs. Well, and wait a minute.
I could have just
see. He knows what I'm talking about.
I understand, and I'd like for us to listen to what he's talking about.
As opposed to
what we're
saying.
No, we're saying the same thing.
Well,
What we're saying, at the end of the day, GMO seeds were introduced to the this country for the most part 20, 30 years ago. But black farmers were losing land long before GMO seeds.
No, I got you.
They were losing their numbers long before GMO seeds. Now, GMO seeds are sure, that's another straw on the proverbial back of the camel.
There we go.
But there's a trend where black farmers have been discriminated against directly and or indirectly, whether it's through seeds, whether it's through farm equipment, whether it's through denying them the loan to purchase even additional land or to pay their labor. At the core is, of course, discrimination, and it has taken on various and sundry forms. But whether you're being discriminated against by a seed company like Stein, or whether you're being discriminated against by a bank that's not allowing you to borrow money, or whether you're discriminated against by the federal government and its loan programs and other benefits, the central theme here for black farmers and their heirs has been, i.e., discrimination. And these other various and sundry forms are simply adding to the demise of the black farmer. Now, let's go back to seeds, if you will. GMO seeds right now have been necessary, whether you agree with it or not, and I don't agree with it.
No, I don't.
But to the extent the industry now, the entire agricultural industry is predicated upon volume, as it were.
Yes.
In order to generate the volume necessary to service the debt on the high-price equipment that the equipment manufacturers are providing, then you have to have seeds that are capable of higher yields, whether we agree with that argument or not. The black farmers are a victim of a double whammy.
Yes.
On the one hand,
Now we're
they are
talking.
investing in several $1 million for equipment, and then they're being sold inferior seeds and cannot therefore generate the cash necessary to service the debt on the millions of dollars worth of equipment.
May I ask another question to you?
Of course.
So I'm a white person, and I want to know, white farmers have just as much problems as the black farmer.
Not true. Can't be true. Not true at all. The credit and money access that white people have in America is way above the access that black people have on
Depending on where,
no,
though.
it's not
I mean,
depending.
across...
You cannot show me any area of
And I'm
of
just asking
credit
a
or
question.
business,
I'm not saying I'm not
but
trying to
giving you an
discriminate
answer.
or anything like that. I'm just
trying to give you an
asking.
answer to give you a solid footing here.
Okay.
That being that you are not going to be able to go into any arena in America where you will find access to money available to black people like it is to white people.
What about the average, low-income person in the Midwest area, though?
This is what our payday loan people live on.
Because I personally, I grew up very poor, so I'm trying to understand where you're trying to say that black people have just as a harder time than a white person, and that's not true, because I've had just as hard time.
No, what he's saying is this, and no, you guys, and we can't get off the subject.
No, we're not, but I'm just asking
what
a
he's
question
saying when it comes
to discrimination,
and this is from a business perspective.
Right.
When it comes to a lending situation, it is. Black people have been discriminated, and it's still being done today.
But so has some white people.
No.
Right.
No, we understand,
Okay,
but
right,
it's lower.
Excuse me, let me do the Wallace here.
Okay.
Okay, this is not to educate. This is not a first grade education on discrimination.
Right.
This is a conversation with an intellectual, a man who is involved in a real fight about a real battle.
Well, and I'm trying to
Well,
understand his side.
I
That's why I'm
understand,
just
but once
asking
again,
the question.
First grade, you have to go. If you don't understand discrimination, you're not going to understand what he's talking about. If you don't believe discrimination takes place, you won't understand what he's talking about. If you don't believe that there is a group of people called poor people that will include black, white, brown, yellow, and everyone who are totally discriminated against as a group, but as we look within those groups, a poor white person will have better access to income
Capital.
than a poor black person, or in many cases a middle class black person, and in some cases a high class black person in terms of access to their money. So that as a discussion point is one that I hope we don't have to go back to in order to justify this conversation with this hero that we are talking
No.
to.
I just wanted to understand, and thank you for clarifying that.
But I wanted to address the hero because No, I
Yeah,
can't.
well, you can. I've already missed one break, but
Let's go to.
No, we're going to go on. You ask him that.
Yeah, no,
that
I am in
next
total agreement with what he's saying because he hears in total agreement because what it is a loop of craziness and where
I guess what I'm saying is it's not so much to whether we want to agree with him as I want us to hear him. We can discuss whether we agree with him at another time. His time, his study, his research, his information is the priority today, and I would like to have our audience hear what he's got to say, and we can discuss that. We can argue with it at another time. But he is indeed the warrior, the field marshal, and the general that we need to hear discuss the war that's taking place between black farmers and our United States of America Agriculture Department, and how we as a nation will benefit if black farmers can get back to the point of where they represent a lot larger aspect of the consciousness of farming and how to do it. Because as you note, the BMAs, the changes on the seeds, all of those are things that we have little control of.
no, that's not true.
Well, it is. You either go broke and do it another way, or you go organic and you try to build into a new system. But if you are going to deal with what's going on now, and that's that the world wants food in volume, you have to kind of go along with what they're doing, especially if your money's on it. You have Bishop Hall, who put up $100,000 or so to purchase seeds, expecting that the seeds were going to, one, increase the yield on their property, of their food, and two, do it in a timely fashion. And those things did not occur, and a lawsuit is taking place. They're suing the company for misrepresenting what those seeds would do. The reason they're able to sue the company on what those seeds are intended to do was because when that company sells seeds to white people and white farmers, those seeds grow soybeans. Am I correct, Dr. Burrell?
Yes, that's basically the essence of the lawsuit, is that Stein Seed and its sales representatives in the South, as it were, targeted African American farmers, and they charged them for the cost of what we would call the genetically modified seeds. Whether we agree with GMO, there's another argument. They sold these farmers the GMO seeds, promising them that their yields would be sufficient to service the debt on these farmers' capital outlay and equipment. But instead what they did is they switched those seeds. They sent them to locations where they switched those certified seeds, gave those seeds to other individuals, and in turn sold fake seeds or adulterated seeds, the bait and switch, to black farmers, guaranteeing virtually their lower yields and consequently their losses. So yes, it was a deliberate act of discrimination. It wasn't a matter of they hit one button and the wrong bag of seeds came out, or the truck got lost and they took a variety to the black farmers. And but they knew that they were. It was calculated and it was deliberate and it was targeted toward African American farmers.
And to add to that, I would speculate that there may have been some small white farmers or some other farmers that also were mistreated in that direction. But historically and traditionally, black farmers have caught the wrath of the large industry. This is why we're looking again at why we went from 20 million black farmers down to 5,000.
A million black farmers down to 5,000 as 16,000 million acres. 16 million acres down to 2 million acres.
But in the midst
let me just say,
go ahead.
And I know you got to take a break, but the defendant himself, the Department of Agriculture, admitted that it was discriminating against black farmers. So there was no argument whether or not there was discrimination, particularly when the shooter says, yeah, I shot that person. I discriminated against that person.
But then there's also the difficulty of getting the money to the people.
So how can we help you, get the word out there to, maybe change this for you?
We're going to let you answer that right after we take our break. This is Empire Talks Back. We're having the great opportunity to speak to Mr. Thomas Burrell, president of the Black Farmers and Agriculturalists Association, centered out of Memphis, Tennessee. We'll be back right after this short break.
the trifecta of Southern California radio. Heard on 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, and 106.5 FM.
Publish your legal notice in West Side Story newspaper. For the best service and the best rates, call 909-384-8131. Publishing legal notices in the city and county of San Bernardino since 1990. West Side Story provides friendly expert service. Call 909-384-8131 to benefit from budget-friendly rates. Whether a fictitious business name, a name change, a divorce summons, or any other legal or public notice, call West Side Story newspaper 909-384-8131. 909-384-8131. That's 909-384-8131.
Covered California knows that one moment can change your life. That moment you say, I do. That moment you meet your baby for the first time. Or even that moment you lose your job and your health insurance along with it. For those times when life changes, we've got you covered. Covered California lets you choose from brand name health plans, and you may even get help paying for it. Your enrollment period is limited, so find out if you qualify by getting free expert help at coveredca.com today. Covered California. It's more than just health care. It's life care.
Don't miss a minute of the action. Check out the podcasts at www.kcaaradio.com, the station that leaves no listener behind, KCAA.
Companies and all of the discrimination. This stuff been going on for years.
This is Empire Talks Back. I'm Wallace Allen with Tammy Martin Rouse and Miss Lindsay. And we're talking to Mr. Thomas Burrell. My associates here are very organically inclined in terms of food. They're very concerned about the spread of GMO seeds. I'm kind of stuck in reality of what we are doing and what we can do. I'm excited not just about the fact that we have an advocate that's there to protect and to increase the acreage of land available to black farmers, but to also increase the knowledge for people to understand what farming really is and what opportunities are there, because once again, if you're not growing food, your nation is starting to fail. And we need to be able to have a much better control and input in the kind of food that we're growing. There is good news for black farmers. There is good news in the food and agriculture business. As we look at the future, I understand that as you talk about the land that's been lost, you are also looking, Mr. Burrell, at a way to increase acreage and access to acreage for black farmers. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, again, Wallace and Tammy and Lindsay, thank you for having us today. This association, the Black Farmers and Agriculturalists Association, has a platform for making sure that we can get young black men and women, and that's not the exclusion to other groups, to get young black men and women back into the industry of agriculture. You got to keep in mind that in this community, the African American community, Wallace, there is a misplaced aggression regarding the black farmers, or at least when you mention farming, it conjures up images of servitude. This is where most people were suffering in the South. This is where a lot of deprivation happened during slavery, semi-slavery, sharecropping. So when we talk about agriculture in this community, there's a knee-jerk reaction. What we're trying to do now is get more young black men and women. We find that young African Americans who are in their 40s and younger are more excited about getting into it. They are not, shall we say, subject or caused to be subjected to those negative images of agriculture. What this association is trying to do is to make sure that we provide loans for them, help them to get loans, help them to have the technical assistance. No individual, for the most part, and I'll just use that for now, will go into farming by themselves. It's difficult to do. We almost always, whether you're white, black, or brown, you had an uncle, you had a grandmother, you had someone who was already in the industry. They allowed you to use their equipment. They allowed you to do X. They allowed you to do Y to prevent you from having to borrow 100%. But what happened in the African American community, to the extent that the older members were discriminated against, they had to load up the truck and move to Beverly or Chicago, as it were. So there's this dearth of expertise, this apprenticeship in the community. So when young people want to go into agriculture, there is no big brother. There is no aunt or grandmother. This association, we're trying to pair the existing group of black farmers and then allow them to be an apprentice for to help with any young person coming in. This association has a farming entity where we are helping young individuals out of the city of Memphis, out of Houston, out of Atlanta and Chicago, who otherwise have an interest in farming but do not have that foundation. So that's what we are trying to do at this point.
What about land and the people who have, the heirs who have left land, who have, as you say, loaded everything on the truck, went to Chicago, went to Detroit, went to Pennsylvania, and left that land in Mississippi and Tennessee and Arkansas and Alabama? What's available for those folks as they look at how they can assign that land or create a relationship with black farmers that would allow that land to be used? And
that's an excellent question. We call those individuals, and no disrespect, but we refer to those individuals as absentee landowners. You have infinitely more black landowners than you have black farmers, and a lot of their land is lying fallow. They left. They went to Chicago and L.A. and New York and Philly, as it were, and a lot of that land is unproductive. So we're trying to match the two together. We're asking those who own the land to call our office, and maybe we will be able to connect them with an existing farmer or use that opportunity to promote a platform, to create a platform for a beginning black farmer. We also are helping young men and women to develop an appreciation for operating the equipment. Most of the equipment now is sophisticated. As a matter of fact, my father, your grandfather, probably wouldn't be able to drive a tractor. A lot of the equipment now, you got not GMO, but you've got the GPS system, so they literally drive themselves, program the computers, etc. And so that's very exciting to the young black people who are trying to get into the industry. They get out of their air-conditioned pickup trucks, they get into an air-conditioned tractor, which is here again one of the reasons you almost have to use the seeds that are capable of generating that degree of income to service the debt on this high-priced equipment.
one of the things that we keep going back to, and we will have to, and that is the seed. There was a seed saving program. What are we doing to create access to seeds that are, well, no, and Tammy, this is the question.
No, but you see.
How do you get?
No, you're talking two double negatives, because once you purchase the seeds, you.
No, I'm not talking about purchase. How can you get to the, what do you call them, the antique seeds,
basically?
Yeah.
How do you get to
traditional heirloom seeds?
Heirloom seeds, yeah. How can you get to heirloom seeds?
If you have already, and this is what I'm trying to tell you, Wallace, and I know he knows. Once you have already went to bed, okay, and bought those seeds,
yes,
you cannot plant anything else on those grounds. You cannot have your own seeds.
No.
They will lose money, get fined, and that will hurt them even more.
What we just talked about leading into that was
they have to turn in
new properties. We're talking about properties that haven't been farmed, new people that are going, hopefully going to make their land accessible for farming. I haven't brought this up, but as you go into the cities, now we're looking at a new type of farming, urban farming. And there is a focus on organic farming. And so as you look at the fact that the African American farmers are not having access to all the land today that they hopefully will have access to tomorrow, the land that they're going to move into tomorrow has an opportunity to have heirloom seeds in it. It has an opportunity to create the organic small farms that can supply and distribute to local areas, creating a different type of farming economics for the new type of farmer that we're talking about creating for the use of the growth of the black farmer. Do I make sense to you there, Mr. Burrell?
Yes, we want, as they were saying, and I think maybe it was Machiavelli, you have to use what you have at this point in time. We do know that we want to get away from the GMO seeds, but you have to start with where you are. You can't give up what is for what ought to be.
Can't throw
now,
that Ford away till the Cadillac's in the
be,
garage.
But we've got to start with what is the case right now.
Yeah.
So with that, what type of emphasis and direction are we looking at for creating access to heirloom seeds and paying attention to the difference between that and the GMO seed?
Well, keep in mind, we have several young men and women right now who are growing organic food.
Okay.
One of the problems for organic foods, though, is that they are limited to size and they're limited to the market.
Exactly.
There is no quote-unquote infrastructure. When we talk about agriculture, we have to, it's like a ladder. You at this production is that rung number one, and then you have to get to processing, further processing, distribution, and ultimately to the retailer. We know that there are people in the city of, say, in the cities of California and Michigan and Illinois and New York who are willing to buy those seeds. But these black farmers don't have the wherewithal, the resources to create the quote-unquote infrastructure. How do we go from organic tomatoes in Tennessee to produce those tomatoes to get them into Los Angeles or to New York? That requires an infrastructure, which requires, again, capital. So these farmers, they're barely getting the capital to even grow the commodity on the one hand, let alone having the resources to create the infrastructure to create the ladder, those other rungs of the ladder, to get that product to market. So it's going to take a collaborative effort, and this is where, here again, the Department of Agriculture's discrimination is so effective, is because, or effective in that it is denying these individuals access to credit. So one of the things we're talking about is to make sure that we develop an appreciation for the need for the infrastructure and the amount of credit for the banking institutions that are going to be amenable to creating that infrastructure.
So as Ms. Lindsay asked earlier, so what does that look like? What does the solution look like? What does the infrastructure?
Yeah, how do we get the information out there for you, or how do we,
And describing the opportunity, because as we say, there's a lack of infrastructure. That means that those who are able to create that infrastructure are now moving into an economic opportunity for distribution. For one of the things about organic food is that it doesn't have preservatives, and so it has to get to the market quickly.
Precisely.
Yeah.
That's an excellent example.
Yeah.
So here again, when you're talking about perishables, and this is one of the reasons most black farmers are into what we call food stock at this point. They're not growing the product that is used at the end level. They're growing products that are used because of shelf life, etc. Soybeans, the shelf life of a soybean.
Yeah, because you can't mass
GMO
produce that.
or whether it's an heirloom, can be a year. The shelf life of corn can be several years. So these farmers now, if they're going to go into perishable, that means they need refrigerated trucks as opposed to dry trucks.
Right.
That means they're going to need a warehouse in California as opposed to a farm shed or headquarters in Mississippi. So here again, USDA and banking institutions provide the funds to do just that. But if the farmers are still being a victim of discrimination, they are shut out of, for the lack of a better phrase, the development of the infrastructure to be able to get their commodity from the farm, as it were, to the inner city, where people who are on this phone, who are agreeing with us, are saying that's what we need to do. But, to get from step one, from A to Z in this particular case, not A to B, we're trying to get to Z. So that means we've got to perfect B, C, D, X, and Y before we get there. And that's what we are hoping, that the attention that is drawn regarding the discrimination, whether it's from USDA or from a Stein seed company, will help to develop those discussions.
One of the things that we note over time is that in the middle of a transition, in the middle of a change, we, like you say, we have to kind of walk on both sides of the line. We're going to take our short break, and when we come back, Mr. Burrell, I'd like to look at the different type of farmer that an urban farmer may be, the different type of crop, and is that urban farmer better equipped for this transition into heirloom seeds, into organic farming? Because if he's in the urban area, his distribution potential is a lot shorter. Here we have these farmer markets, very popular. We'll be back. Talk to us about the future of that and how it can affect the black farmers. This is Empire Talks Back. I'm here with the brilliant Tammy Martin and Leslie and Lindsay.
Girl, he a jacket?
Yeah, you got to keep coming back. I'll learn your name about the third or fourth time
it's
you're here.
Okay. No
That's
problem.
okay.
No problem. I'll be back for sure.
And we'll be
Thank
back,
you.
and hopefully we'll ask the kind of questions, get the answers that are going to make you excited about eating organic, eating correctly, supporting heirloom seeds, and pushing and making it successful for people to grow locally and provide you that food quickly and efficiently. We'll be right back.
Now, Wallace,
San Bernardino, Loma Linda, Rialto listens to KCAA Radio.
Publish your legal notice in West Side Story newspaper. For the best service and the best rates, call 909-384-8131. Publishing legal notices in the city and county of San Bernardino since 1990. West Side Story provides friendly expert service. Call 909-384-8131 to benefit from budget-friendly rates. Whether a fictitious business name, a name change, a divorce summons, or any other legal or public notice, call West Side Story newspaper 909-384-8131. 909-384-8131. That's 909-384-8131.
I never planned on losing my job, but we all know life can change in an instant. And losing my family's health insurance was an even tougher pill to swallow. So I looked into Cobra, but too pricey. Then I found out I could enroll through Covered California, where I was able to choose from good health insurance companies I've actually heard of. I even got help paying for it.
There's a limited time to qualify after losing your insurance, so check out CoveredCA.com today. Covered California. It's more than just health care. It's life care.
Go ahead and say it. We're all ears. KCAA.
I will talk about it.
This is Empire Talks Back. I'm Wallace Allen. I'm with some very smart people today, and hopefully I'll be smarter after the end of the show. But we're talking about the importance of the food that we eat, the seeds that create that food, and are those seeds modified? Are they functional? But in the midst of the argument about modified seeds, which, by the way, the United States of America seems to be the only country on the planet that encourages people to do that. All of the other countries are moving away from modified seeds. They're
kicking those companies out. Monsanto's, they don't even want them around.
Yeah, but the trick about Monsanto and all of these bad seed people is their seeds are so aggressive that they will grow in your farm on your acreage without you planting them there, and the patents on the seed companies and the seeds will allow Monsanto to come and sue you for the fact that their seed blew onto your property and grew unauthorized and killed all the stuff you're growing. So we're dealing with laws, we're dealing with attitudes, we're dealing with traditions of power. And as we deal with those things, one of the things that we have to remember is the reason we have to deal with them is because they're discriminating, they're the giant, they're the elephant in the room, and as we go and ask the elephant to move over, even when he moves over, he's still sucking up all the air in the room. So we need some new rooms, we need some new attitudes, we need a new way to do it while we're dealing with this elephant in the room.
Yeah.
Dr. Burrell, as we look at the new farming potential, urban farming, hydroponic farming, warehouse farming, and if we're using heirloom seeds, what does that look like for us in the future? Should we be excited about that? Should we? I know we have to fight the battle with the government. Tammy says that it's important that we know how the government's involved not only in controlling the seeds but creating the loans. Should we be looking for money?
The same people that work the company come right from the government. They go right back to the companies. They go right back to the government. Right. That's just how it works.
So should we be looking for new sources of income? Go ahead, sir.
We believe that's what this crisis now is going to, this is the proverbial handwriting on the wall, Tammy, Lindsay, and Wallace. Maybe this is the wake-up call. Maybe now, rather than depending on these corporations to produce these seeds and corner the market and consequently force us into buying their seeds, maybe that's the wake-up call here.
Yes.
Maybe it's time for those of us to consider going back into small farming. We got away from small farming and went to corporate farming.
Agreed.
So here again, when you ask the question about whether or not people in the city are better suited to get that product to the market because of their proximity, of course the answer is yes. But here's one of the problems. We don't have enough volume, though. There are not enough people growing food in the urban area, in the cities, to sustain and meet the needs, the demand of that food. Now, on the other hand, you've got the black farmers farming out in rural Mississippi Delta and or Louisiana, Texas. They have the land volume, but they don't have the proximity. So maybe, as that phrase you use, Wallace, transition. So how do you go from what you have now, as Machiavelli would say, to what it is we ought to do? So we ought to be now growing food, whether it's in the urban area or elsewhere. If I could make this point, a person told me once when I was about 12 years old, and that was in the 50s and 60s, he said God kept black folk on the farm until after the Depression. Let me say that one again. He said God kept black folks on the farm until after the Depression. Can you imagine what would have happened to the African Americans after we had been in the city of Chicago? And I'm not advocating food stamps, but there were no food stamps. There were no government programs. Black folks would have starved on a wholesale basis. Let's suppose, whether or not the government is involved, let's suppose all of a sudden these genetically modified seeds, something should happen, and we're depending on these producers to grow food, and within a short period of time, the food chain could be disrupted or damaged, and people could be facing starvation. So maybe this is the wake-up call. We ought to be growing it in the city. We ought to be growing it in the rural and all places in between.
And independent of the modified seeds. Lindsay?
Yes.
So I have a question. Do you find that with shipping, these products as well, is that a problem in this as well? Getting the areas where these farmers are, getting that product here because of, how you said with shipping and infrastructure. Yeah. Absolutely. So do you feel that is also a problem, because I find that it is, because we can't get things like that here in certain, especially in California, there's not a lot of places that you can get those things to actually, use these products.
Distribution.
Let's use California as an example. California is the #1 producer of what we call consumable foods. That would be the fruits and vegetables.
Right, I agree with you on that, yes.
Now, here you are in New York, 3,000 miles away, and in Hunts Point down in the Bronx, most of the trucks that you will see there bringing food into New York will be coming from California, will come from the Rio Grande Valley, will come from the Snake River Valley in Idaho.
But my question is where the money is coming, because it's going to be more expensive to have that transportation of moving this product to different locations, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
So here again, the small farmer, i.e. black farmers, they don't have the wherewithal to invest not only in the farm equipment and the farm chemicals and the farm seeds, and now to invest in the trucks, the warehouses, the employees, to get that commodity now to Los Angeles or to Chicago or to New York. It can be done, but keep in mind, the government understands if we're going to keep the GMOs alive, we've got to make sure that our infrastructure is pro-GMO. We've got to make sure the equipment dealers are pro-GMO. There's a GMO culture out there. It's not with the seeds. The equipment manufacturers are buying into the GMO. The transportation companies are buying into the GMO. The food companies, the retailers themselves, the Safeways, the Krogers, the Walmart, they're buying into the GMO. So you got a GMO culture.
that nets about $10 trillion a year. And it's hard to turn away from that. And as we talk about creating this alternative, this transitional aspect of farming, even today as we look at 5,000 black farmers and the impact that they are actually having inside of that $10 trillion, moving that money or moving that attitude over into another area is realistic, and I guess we have to stick to a certain extent with the model that's there.
But wait a minute, that's not the model. But see, the alternative, wait a minute, the alternative is GMO. The real was organic. They've turned away from that.
Understand.
Yeah, no,
and so turning back to organic is a
but
transition.
The consumer bought into it too now.
Yes,
you got to keep in mind there's enough blame now to go around.
Frozen
because
food,
if the
canned
consumers
food.
had rejected GMOs, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
But they're not educated, and they don't know about, because I just asked a couple people the other day about GMO. They don't know what the heck I'm talking about.
The survival syndrome doesn't give them time, doesn't give them the
First of all, just say that GMO is genetically modified
organisms.
And people out there that don't know, they need to know that now. Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Cheap. It's cheap.
People that
cheap
are
and it's
fighting
mass
for
productive.
survival on a daily basis, people who are a paycheck away from being homeless, people who are in that circumstance, to give them the level of education that they need to be able to fight this is great, but then how do they fight it? The money that they have, if they've got food stamps, they're kind of stuck.
How's a food stamp recipient going to argue against GMO?
He can't. No way he can do it. And for us,
why you can't argue against GMO?
Because he's not big enough.
Recipient.
He's trying to survive. He's a food stamp recipient.
He's 30 days away from starvation, ma'am.
He's not.
Yeah, but I mean, but that's where the education comes.
First of all,
wait. That's where the
organic
education.
foods cost him more.
No, wait.
But
that's
it costs this. You got to deal with that person's
no.
survival.
If you are taking away all that GMO meat that everybody's eating, all the other stuff, everybody thinks it costs more. No, it doesn't. If they're eating organic and now they're eating cleaner, they are actually not going to the fast food because it's all GMO. Most, when we want to talk about, because I can play dollar for dollar and go in the store and say, okay, so you're about to spend $10 on all this GMO meat, so stop eating it.
Okay, we've only got
you can go to
couple
Dollar
of minutes
General and
left.
get that.
And that's what we talk about on a regular basis. Tammy is encouraging
It's just a
people
myth.
to
It's a
eat.
myth.
Well, it's a myth to a person who makes money. But people who don't have the money, it's not a myth because it's not even on their mind.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah,
it's not on their mind.
It's not on their mind. They don't have. That's what that survival syndrome insists upon. It takes your attention away from the things that you should be able to think about. That's the distraction that people create when they discuss things that are interesting but not critical and important to an individual's life. Dr. Burrell, we need to have you come back. We certainly did not cover 10% of the information that's available and that we need to have. And we do need to encourage ourselves to be more self-sustaining as we look to our present and our future. 30 seconds, Dr. Burrell. Close out for us and give us something exciting to look forward to.
We thank you again, Wallace, Tammy, and Lindsay. But if you want to talk to this association, or if your members would like to call, they can do that by calling 901-522-8880 and go to our website, which is www.mybfaa.us. If they have questions.
Yeah, we have that, and we will continue to send people in your direction. And once again, we will follow what's going on with the seed fight. But more importantly, we want to be part of helping to spread the word about the transition that's available, the correct way to look forward to eating, and to how we can support those farmers who are trying actually to support us.
Yes, and thank you, Dr. Wallace, for coming on the show and explaining us and making us more aware of what has been happening with black farmers.
Thomas Burrell.
Thank you.
Black
Thank
Farmers
you again.
and Agriculturalists Association, thank you very much. We'll look forward to seeing you again. All right. Whoop, whoop. Never can get finished. It's the quickest hour on radio. I appreciate you guys for coming in.
Hey, thanks for having us.
And what's her name?
Keep it exciting.
What's her name?
Lindsay.
Oh, look at you. Got it right this time. High five, high five. Good job. All right.
And you are Tammy Martin Rouse, the person who roused us up. And I want to say, Mood Master, you have really been kicking today. Your backdrop was perfect. And our Mood Master, Mr. Anthony Garcia, we appreciate him.
Got the groove going
Very
on.
much. Big time groove. If you guys haven't determined what you're going to do on Labor Day, you might want to come down to Mountain Vista Winery. Enjoy the jazz and wine experience. Tickets are $35. You can give us a call at 909. Just call West Side Story Newspaper and we'll talk to you about those tickets. But more importantly, you guys be safe and understand that we'll be back. 2 circumstances. 1, if the good Lord's willing. 2, if the creek don't rise. God bless you. Thank you for spending time with us. Be good, and stay woke.
We've got to fulfill the book. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom?